hit the floor with a wet slap. Nobody looked up. Why would they? She was just the janitor. Her name was Carmen Reyes, but no one in the glass tower of Meridian Financial Group bothered to learn it. To them, she was invisible. A shadow in gray coveralls pushing a yellow cart through their polished hallways. Someone to step around. Someone to ignore. But that was exactly how she wanted it. Carmen kept her head down as she moved through the third-floor corridor that Tuesday morning. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail. No makeup, no jewelry. Nothing that would make anyone look twice. She wore thick-framed glasses that she didn't need and walked with a slight hunch that made her seem smaller than she was. She'd perfected the art of being nobody. Excuse me, a sharp voice cut through the air. Carmen stopped. She turned slowly. A woman in a tight pencil skirt and designer heels stood there, arms crossed. Her name was Jessica Monroe. Vice President of Operations, mid-30s, blonde. The kind of person who measured her worth by how many people she could look down on. "You missed a spot," Jessica said, pointing at the floor near the water cooler. "Right there." "I shouldn't have to tell you how to do your job." Carmen nodded quietly. "I'll get it." "You better," Jessica said with a cold smile. "We pay you to keep this place clean, not to wander around daydreaming." Two junior analysts standing nearby snickered. One of them, a young man in an expensive suit, whispered something to his colleague. They both laughed. Carmen said nothing. She walked to her cart, grabbed a towel, and wiped the floor where Jessica had pointed. There was nothing there. No spill, no dirt, but Carmen cleaned it anyway. Jessica walked away without another word, her heels clicking like little hammers on the tile. This was Carmen's life now. 6 months ago, she'd taken this job. 6 months of being treated like furniture. 6 months of mockery, dismissal, and contempt, but she endured it because she had to, because this wasn't just a job. It was a mission. Carmen had been many things in her life. Daughter who lost her parents too young, a soldier who served 3 tours overseas, a member of an elite tactical unit that didn't officially exist, and then a woman betrayed by the very system she'd bled for. But that part of her story was buried now, classified, erased. As far as the world knew, Carmen Reyes had never been anything more than ordinary, and that's exactly what made her dangerous. The morning dragged on. Carmen emptied trash bins on the 5th floor. She scrubbed coffee stains from the break room counter. She restocked paper towels in the executive restroom, where a man in a $1,000 suit didn't even acknowledge her presence as he washed his hands and walked out. Invisible, always invisible. At 11:30, she took her lunch break in the basement. There was a small janitor's closet there, tucked away behind the boiler room. It smelled like bleach and old concrete, but it was quiet, private. Carmen sat on an overturned bucket and unwrapped a sandwich she'd made that morning. She ate slowly, methodically, her mind elsewhere. She thought about the real reason she was here. 6 months ago, her former commander, a man named Colonel David Harding, had called her. It was the first time she'd heard from anyone in her old unit since she'd been forced out. "I need your help," he'd said. His voice had been tight, worried. Harding told her about Meridian Financial Group. On the surface, it looked like a legitimate investment firm, but intelligence suggested it was a front. Money laundering, arms trafficking, possibly worse. The kind of operation that funded terror cells in destabilized regions. "We can't move on them officially," Harding had said. "Too many connections, too many powerful people involved. We need someone on the inside, someone they'd never suspect." Carmen had hesitated. She'd left that life behind, or tried to, but Harding knew how to reach her. "There's a name on their payroll," he'd said quietly. Marcus Voss. Carmen's blood had gone cold. Marcus Voss, the man who'd sold out her unit in Baghdad. The man responsible for the ambush that killed 3 of her teammates. The man who'd walked away clean because he had friends in high places. "He's their head of security," Harding continued. "If we can prove he's involved, we can bring the whole thing down. But I need evidence, and I need someone who can get close without being noticed." So Carmen became a janitor. She took the job, kept her head down, listened, watched. Gathered intelligence piece by piece, and every day, she saw Marcus Voss walk through those halls like he owned the world. At 12:15, Carmen returned to the upper floors. She was mopping near the executive conference room when she heard voices inside. The door was slightly ajar. She slowed her movements, leaned the mop against the wall, pretended to adjust her cart and listened. Shipment arrives Thursday, a man's voice said. Deep, confident. Carmen recognized it immediately. Marcus Voss. Are we clear on the route? Another voice asked. Completely, Voss replied. No paper trail, no flags. It'll look like a standard transfer. And the buyer? Confirmed. Payment's already in escrow. Carmen's pulse quickened. This was it. This was the evidence Harding needed. She reached into her pocket and activated the small recording device hidden there. It looked like a key fob. Harmless. Unnoticeable. What about the feds? The second voice asked. Voss laughed. They're not even looking. As far as they know, we're just a financial firm. Clean as a whistle. Good, the other man said. Let's keep it that way. Footsteps approached the door. Carmen turned quickly, grabbing her mop, pretending to work. The door opened. Marcus Voss stepped out. He was tall, broad-shouldered, graying at the temples. He wore a suit that probably cost more than Carmen made in 3 months. His eyes were sharp, cold. He glanced at her. For a moment, their eyes met. Carmen felt her breath catch. Did he recognize her? It was impossible. She'd changed too much. Different hair, different posture, different life. Voss's gaze slid past her like she was nothing. Make sure that floor's dry, he said flatly. I don't want anyone slipping. Yes, sir, Carmen said quietly, keeping her voice soft. Submissive Voss walked away without another glance. Carmen exhaled, slowly. She'd been inches away from the man who destroyed her life, and he didn't even know she existed. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Carmen moved through her duties on autopilot, cleaning, listening, recording. By 4 o'clock, she'd gathered enough. Dates, times, names, routes, everything Harding needed to move on Meridian. She just had to get the recording out. Her shift ended at 5. She planned to leave quietly, as always, walk out the service entrance, drive to the safe drop point 3 miles away, hand over the evidence, and finally, bring Marcus Voss to justice. But at 4:43, everything changed. Carmen was on the second floor emptying a trash bin near the elevators when she heard it, a sound that didn't belong, a sharp crack, then another, gunfire. Her body reacted before her mind caught up. She dropped the trash bag and moved toward the sound. Every instinct from her old life flooding back. Screams erupted from the lobby. More gunshots, voices, shouting. Carmen reached the stairwell and looked down. 3 men in black, tactical gear were storming through the main entrance. They carried automatic rifles, and they were shooting anyone who tried to run. Carmen's heart slammed against her ribs. This wasn't part of the plan. This wasn't supposed to happen, but it was happening, and no one else could stop it. She took a breath. Then she moved. The janitor was gone. The soldier had returned. Carmen's mind shifted into combat mode. Years of training flooded back in an instant. The way her instructors had drilled it into her. Assess, adapt, act. She moved down the stairwell in silence, her soft-soled shoes making no sound on the concrete steps. The screams from the lobby grew louder. More gunfire. The sharp crack of rounds hitting marble and glass. She reached the first-floor landing and pressed herself against the wall. Through the small window in the stairwell door, she could see into the lobby. Chaos. People were scattered across the floor, some hiding behind furniture, others lying motionless. A security guard near the front desk wasn't moving. Blood pooled beneath him. 3 gunmen moved through the space with military precision. They wore black masks and tactical vests. Professional. Organized. This wasn't random violence. This was an operation. The lead gunman shouted orders. Everyone on the ground. Hands where I can see them, now! Employees dropped to their knees, hands raised, sobbing. Carmen scanned the scene, cataloging every detail. 3 hostiles, all armed with AR-style rifles. 1 covering the entrance. 1 controlling the crowd. 1 moving toward the elevators, toward the upper floors. They were separating people, looking for someone. Carmen's jaw tightened. This was connected to Meridian. It had to be. She'd stirred something up. Her investigation, the recording. Someone knew, and now innocent people were paying the price. She had to move. But she had no weapon, no backup, no tactical gear, just a janitor's uniform and a lifetime of skills most people didn't know existed. It would have to be enough. Carmen slipped back up the stairs, moving quickly but silently. She needed a weapon. Anything. The second-floor maintenance closet. She reached it in 30 seconds, her hands moving on muscle memory. She opened the door and scanned the shelves, cleaning supplies, tools, a metal pry bar. A box cutter. Not much, but it was something. She grabbed the pry bar, solid steel, about 18 inches long, and tucked the box cutter into her pocket. Then she moved back toward the stairwell. Her plan was forming. 3 gunmen. She had to take them down one at a time, quietly, before they realized what was happening. If she could isolate one, she could even the odds, but she had to be smart. One mistake, and people would die. Carmen descended to the first floor again. She eased the stairwell door open just a crack. The gunman covering the entrance was 10 feet away, his back to her. He stood in front of the glass doors, rifle ready, watching the street outside, waiting for police. Probably, or making sure no one got out. Carmen took a slow breath. This was the moment she pushed. The door opened silently and stepped into the hallway that ran along the side of the lobby. The gunman didn't turn. Carmen moved like a shadow, closing the distance. 5 feet, 3 feet. She could hear his breathing now. 1 foot. She struck. The pry bar came down hard on the side of his neck, right where the carotid met the shoulder, a pressure point she'd used 100 times in training. The gunman's body went rigid. He dropped without a sound. Carmen caught the rifle before it hit the ground. She dragged him into the hallway, out of sight, and checked his pulse. Alive. Unconscious. Good. She wasn't here to kill anyone if she didn't have to, but she'd do what was necessary. She stripped the tactical vest off him and put it on. It was too big, but it would work. She checked the rifle, fully loaded, safety off. Now she had a fighting chance. Carmen moved back toward the lobby, staying low. Through the doorway, she could see the second gunman still controlling the hostages. He paced back and forth in front of them, his rifle sweeping over the crowd. "Where is she?" he barked. "Where's the woman?" The hostages stared at him in terror. No one answered. I said, "Where is she?" He shouted again, louder this time. He grabbed a young woman by the arm and hauled her to her feet. She screamed, "Tell me where Carmen Reyes is or I start shooting." Carmen's blood turned to ice. They knew her name. They weren't here for Meridian secrets. They were here for her. She clenched her jaw. Whoever sent them had made a mistake. They thought she was just a janitor, helpless, easy to find. They had no idea what she really was. Carmen raised the rifle and stepped into the lobby. "Let her go," she said, her voice calm and cold. Every head turned. The gunman spun toward her, his eyes widening behind his mask. For a moment, no one moved. The hostages stared at her in shock. The janitor, the quiet woman they'd ignored for 6 months, standing there in a tactical vest, holding a rifle like she'd been born with it. The gunman recovered quickly. He shoved the young woman aside and raised his weapon. But Carmen was faster. She fired a single shot. The round hit his rifle, knocking it out of his hands. He stumbled back, cursing. "Get down!" Carmen shouted at the hostages. They scattered, diving behind desks and columns. The gunman reached for a sidearm. Carmen fired again. This time, the round hit his leg. He went down hard, screaming. Carmen moved forward, keeping the rifle trained on him. "Where's the third one?" she demanded. The gunman groaned, clutching his leg. Blood seeped between his fingers. "Go to hell," he spat. Carmen didn't hesitate. She stepped on his wounded leg. He screamed again. "Where?" she repeated. "Upstairs." He gasped. "5th floor." "He's got orders to—" A burst of gunfire cut him off. Rounds tore through the air, slamming into the marble floor near Carmen's feet. She dove behind a desk as more shots followed. The third gunman. He was on the mezzanine level, firing down into the lobby. Carmen rolled to the side, coming up behind a concrete column. She returned fire, forcing him to take cover. The hostages screamed, scrambling for safety. "Stay down," Carmen shouted. She scanned the mezzanine. The third gunman was moving toward the stairs, trying to flank her. Smart, but not smart enough. Carmen sprinted toward the elevators, using the columns for cover. Rounds chased her. chipping marble and shattering glass. She reached the elevator bank and hit the button. Nothing. Emergency lockdown. Of course. She looked up at the mezzanine. The gunman was halfway down the stairs now, his rifle sweeping the lobby. Carmen had seconds. She slung the rifle over her shoulder and ran toward the main staircase. The gunman saw her and fired. She zigzagged, moving fast, using every bit of cover she could find. A round grazed her shoulder. Pain flared, hot and sharp, but she didn't slow down. She hit the stairs and started climbing. The gunman was above her now, firing down. Carmen pulled the box cutter from her pocket and threw it. It wasn't meant to hit him, it was a distraction. The gunman flinched, turning toward the flash of metal. Carmen surged up the last few steps and tackled him. They went down hard, rolling across the mezzanine floor. His rifle clattered away. Carmen twisted, trying to pin him. But he was strong, trained. He threw a punch. She blocked it and countered with an elbow to his jaw. His head snapped back. She followed with a knee to his ribs, then grabbed his arm and wrenched it behind his back. He struggled, but she had the leverage. Years of hand-to-hand combat training took over. She locked his arm and drove him face first into the floor. He went limp. Carmen rolled off him, breathing hard. Her shoulder burned where the bullet had grazed her, but it wasn't deep. She grabbed the rifle and stood, scanning for more threats. Nothing. It was over. For now. The lobby was silent except for the sound of quiet sobbing. Carmen descended the stairs slowly, rifle still ready. The hostages stared at her. Jessica Monroe was among them, huddled behind a desk, her perfect hair disheveled. Mascara running down her face, she looked at Carmen like she was seeing a ghost. Who are you? Jessica whispered. Carmen didn't answer. She moved to the second gunman, the one she'd shot in the leg, and checked him. Still breathing. Still conscious. Who sent you? Carmen asked. He glared at her, defiant. Carmen pressed the barrel of the rifle against his wounded leg. I won't ask again. Voss, he gasped. Marcus Voss, he knew you were here. He knew what you were doing. Carmen's grip on the rifle tightened, so Voss had figured it out. Somehow he'd discovered her real identity, and he'd sent a kill team. Where is he now? Carmen demanded. The gunman laughed bitterly. Gone, he's already gone. You're too late. Carmen stood, her mind racing. Voss was running, and if he got away, everything she'd worked for would disappear with him. She turned toward the remaining hostages. Police are on their way, she said. Stay here, stay down. You'll be safe. She started toward the exit. Wait, a voice called. Carmen turned. It was one of the junior analysts, the one who'd laughed at her that morning. He stared at her in disbelief. You're not really a janitor, are you? Carmen met his eyes. No, she said quietly. I'm not. And then she was gone. Carmen hit the street at a dead run. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. Red and blue lights flickered against the buildings 2 blocks away. The police were coming fast, but they'd be too late. Marcus Voss had a head start, and men like him always had an exit strategy. Carmen's mind raced as she sprinted toward the parking garage. She'd spent 6 months studying this building, its layout, its routines. She knew every entrance, every exit, every security camera blind spot. She also knew where Voss parked. Executive level, northwest corner. Reserve spot. If he was running, he'd go for his vehicle first. Grab whatever insurance policy he kept close. Cash, fake IDs, evidence to use as leverage. Men like Voss never left themselves without options. Carmen reached the parking garage and ducked inside through the pedestrian entrance. The stairwell echoed with her footsteps as she climbed. She ditched the rifle 2 blocks back, too conspicuous, but she'd kept the handgun she'd taken. Off the second gunman. 9 rounds left, it would have to be enough. She reached the executive level and pressed herself against the wall, peering around the corner. Voss's black Mercedes was still there, and so was he. He stood at the trunk, loading a duffel bag and a metal briefcase into the back. He moved quickly, efficiently, checking his watch every few seconds. Carmen's finger moved to the trigger. She could end this right now. 1 shot. Justice for her fallen teammates, for the innocent people he'd put in danger, for every life he'd destroyed in his pursuit of money and power. But her training held her back. She needed him alive. She needed answers, and she needed evidence that would hold up, that would bring down everyone connected to Meridian. Carmen stepped out from cover. Gun raised. "It's over, Marcus." Voss froze. Then, slowly, he turned. His face showed no surprise. No fear, just cold calculation. "Carmen Reyes," he said, his voice smooth. "I should have known you'd be hard to kill." "Hands where I can see them," Carmen ordered. Voss raised his hands slowly, but his expression remained calm, almost amused. "You've made quite a mess downstairs," he said. "3 trained operators." "You took them out yourself?" "Your intel was bad," Carmen replied. "You thought I was just a janitor." "No," Voss said. "I knew exactly who you were. I've known for 3 weeks." Carmen's stomach tightened, but she kept her weapon steady. "Then why wait?" "Because I wanted to see what you'd find," Voss said. "What you'd report back to Harding. I needed to know how much your people knew about our operation." He smiled. "Turns out not much. You've been chasing shadows, Carmen, wasting your time mopping floors and playing spy." "I have everything," Carmen said. "Recordings, dates, routes, your whole operation." Voss laughed. "That recording device in your pocket? The one you've been using all week?" He shook his head. "Every word you captured was exactly what I wanted you to hear. Misdirection, false trails. By the time your people realize they've been chasing ghosts, the real shipment will be long gone." Carmen's jaw clenched. He'd played her all this time. She'd thought she was hunting him, but he'd been controlling the game. "You're lying," she said. "Am I?" Voss lowered his hand slightly. "Think about it, Carmen. You really believe I'd discuss sensitive operations in a conference room with the door open? With the cleaning lady right outside?" He took a step toward her. Carmen adjusted her aim. "Stay where you are." "You won't shoot me," Voss said confidently. "You need me alive. You need me to testify, to give up names, to bring down the network. That's why you're here instead of pulling the trigger." He took another step. "And that's why you'll lose." Carmen's finger tightened on the trigger. But Voss was right. If she killed him now, the whole network would disappear. His partners would scatter, the evidence would vanish, and her teammates would have died for nothing. "On your knees," she commanded. "Hands behind your head." Voss smiled wider. "You really don't get it, do you?" He reached toward his jacket. "Don't!" Carmen shouted, but Voss was already moving. He pulled something from his pocket. Not a weapon, a phone. He held it up so Carmen could see the screen, a video feed. Her breath caught. It showed a small apartment. Her apartment, and sitting at her kitchen table, bound and gagged, was Colonel David Harding. "No," Carmen whispered. "Oh yes," Voss said. "You're not the only one who can run an operation, Carmen. While you were playing janitor, my people were making insurance policies." On the screen, a figure in black tactical gear stood behind Harding, a gun pressed to his head. "Here's how this works," Voss continued. "You drop your weapon and let me walk away, or I make a call and your friend dies." Carmen's mind raced. Harding had sent her here. He'd trusted her to bring down Voss and Meridian, and now he was paying the price for that trust. "You're bluffing," Carmen said, though her voice was less certain now. Voss tapped the screen. The gunman on the video feed pressed the weapon harder against Harding's head. The colonel's eyes were defiant, but Carmen could see the bruises on his face. The blood on his shirt, they'd hurt him. "Drop the gun, Carmen," Voss said quietly, "or watch him die." The parking garage was silent except for the distant wail of sirens. Carmen's hand trembled slightly. Every instinct screamed at her to pull the trigger. To end Voss right here, but she couldn't let Harding die, not like this, not because of her. "Clock's ticking," Voss said. "What's it going to be?" Carmen lowered her weapon slowly. Voss's smile returned. "Smart choice." "Let him go," Carmen said. "I'll drop the gun. You walk away." "Just let him go." "Of course," Voss said smoothly. "As soon as I'm safely out of the city, I'll release him. You have my word." "Your word means nothing," Voss shrugged. "Then I guess you'll have to trust me anyway." He gestured toward the ground. "The gun. Now." Carmen hesitated. Then she bent down and placed the handgun on the concrete. Voss stepped forward and kicked it away. "Good girl," he said mockingly. He pulled out his own weapon, a sleek 9mm, and aimed it at Carmen. "Now here's the problem," he continued. "I can't actually let you live. You understand that, right? You know too much. You've seen too much, and even with bad intel, you're too damn dangerous. Carmen's eyes narrowed. You said you'd let Harding go. I will, Voss said. After I tie up this loose end. He raised the gun. Nothing personal, Carmen. Just business. Carmen didn't move. She stared at him calmly. You made a mistake, Marcus. Voss paused. Oh, what's that? You assumed I came alone. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across Voss's face. Bluff. Is it? A red laser dot appeared on Voss's chest. His eyes widened. Drop the weapon. A voice called out from the shadows. Voss spun toward the sound. A figure emerged from behind a concrete. Pillar female. Mid-40s dark tactical gear. Rifle raised. Agent Sarah Chen, FBI, and one of Carmen's oldest friends. I said drop it. Chen repeated, her voice ice cold. Voss's hand tightened on his gun. You're surrounded, Chen continued. 4 snipers. 6 tactical agents. You move wrong, you die. As if on cue, more laser dots appeared on Voss's body, his chest, his head, his arms. Voss looked around slowly, realizing the truth. He'd been outplayed. How? He whispered. Carmen picked up her weapon and stood. You were right about one thing, she said. I knew you'd figure out who I was eventually, so I made sure I had backup. She stepped closer. Agent Chen's been monitoring this building for 2 weeks. Every conversation, every movement. While you were feeding me fake intel, we were gathering real evidence. Voss's face darkened. The recording was bait, Carmen finished, to make you think you were in control, to make you sloppy. She smiled coldly. And it worked. Voss's jaw clenched. What about Harding? Already extracted, Chen said. We hit your safe house 20 minutes ago. The colonel's safe. Voss stood frozen, his weapon still in his hand. For a long moment, no one moved. Then slowly, he lowered the gun. It clattered to the ground. Smart choice, Carmen said, echoing his earlier words. Chen moved forward with zip ties while other agents emerged from the shadows. They secured Voss quickly and professionally. As they led him toward the exit, he looked back at Carmen. You think this is over? He said. You think taking me down changes anything? There are a dozen more like me. 100. You can't stop what's coming. Carmen met his eyes. Maybe not, she said quietly, but I can stop you. Voss was silent as they took him away. Carmen stood alone in the parking garage. The adrenaline was fading now, replaced by exhaustion. Her shoulder throbbed where the bullet had grazed her. Her hands were shaking slightly, but it was done. Voss was in custody, Harding was safe, and Meridian's operation was burned. Chen approached, lowering her rifle. You okay? She asked. Carmen nodded slowly. Yeah, I'm okay. Chen studied her for a moment, then smiled. Hell of a day for a janitor. Despite everything, Carmen laughed. It was over. But as she walked toward the exit, a nagging thought crept into her mind. Voss's final words. There are a dozen more like me. Was it just defiance? Or a warning? 3 days later, Carmen walked into a federal building in downtown Washington, D.C. She wore civilian clothes, jeans, a simple jacket, her hair down. No more janitor's uniform, no more disguise, just herself. Agent Chen met her in the lobby and escorted her through security. They rode the elevator in silence to the 7th floor, where a maze of hallways led to a secure briefing room. Inside, Colonel Harding was waiting. He looked tired. Bruises still colored his jawline and his left arm was in a sling, but his eyes were sharp and clear. Carmen, he said, standing as she entered. Sir, she replied. They stood looking at each other for a moment. Then Harding did something Carmen hadn't expected. He pulled her into a careful one-armed hug. Thank you, he said quietly, for not giving up on me. Carmen felt a lump form in her throat. You came for me once, she said. In Kandahar, when everyone else said I was already dead. Harding pulled back and nodded. We don't leave our people behind. No, sir, Carmen agreed. We don't. Chen cleared her throat. We should get started, she said, gesturing to the chairs around the table. They sat. Chen opened a laptop and pulled up a series of files. Marcus Voss has been talking, she began. Not because he wants to, but our forensic accountants found enough evidence in Meridian's servers to bury him 10 times over. He's facing life without parole unless he cooperates. And is he? Carmen asked. Slowly, Chen replied. He's given us names, locations, financial trails. It's going to take months to unravel everything, but we've already made 14 arrests across 3 states. She pulled up a photo, a shipping manifest. That shipment he mentioned? We intercepted it yesterday in Baltimore. 20 crates of military-grade weapons. Destination, unknown. But the money trail leads back to 3 different terror organizations. Carmen felt her chest tighten. If those weapons had made it through. You stopped something big, Harding said, reading her expression. Bigger than you know. Chen nodded. Meridian wasn't just about money laundering. They were facilitating arms deals, human trafficking, corporate espionage. Voss was middle management. The real architects are still out there. She pulled up another file, a network map showing dozens of names connected by lines. At the center was a name Carmen didn't recognize. Sovereign Consulting Group. What is that? Carmen asked. That, Chen said, is what we believe is the parent organization. Meridian was just one branch. There are at least 6 others that we know of, operating in different cities, different industries. Harding leaned forward. This is bigger than any of us anticipated. Voss wasn't lying when he said there were more like him. This network has been operating for at least a decade, influencing elections, destabilizing economies, funding conflicts. Carmen stared at the screen. And you want me to go after them? It wasn't a question. Harding and Chen exchanged a glance. We want to give you a choice, Harding said carefully. You've done more than anyone could have asked. You completed your mission. Voss is behind bars. You're officially cleared of all the charges that forced you out of the service. He slid a folder across the table. Carmen opened it. Inside was a military reinstatement document. Her rank restored. Full honors. An official apology from the Department of Defense for the wrongful investigation that had ended her career. Everything she'd lost. Given back. It's yours if you want it, Harding said. You can return to active duty. We'll find you a good posting. Or, Chen picked up where he left off. Or you can help us finish this. Go deeper. Take down the whole network. Carmen looked between them. As what? Another janitor? Chen smiled slightly. As whatever you need to be. We're building a task force. Small, agile, off the books. People who can operate in the shadows. Who can get close to targets that traditional law enforcement can't touch. You want me to disappear again? Carmen said. We want you to do what you do best, Harding replied. Be invisible until the moment you need to be seen. Carmen sat back in her chair. For 6 months, she'd endured mockery and humiliation. She'd been invisible, dismissed, treated like she didn't matter, and she'd hated every second of it. But she'd also stopped something terrible. She'd saved lives, and there were more lives at stake if this network continued to operate. She thought about the hostages in that lobby. The young woman the gunman had grabbed, Jessica Monroe cowering behind a desk, people who would have died if Carmen hadn't been there, people who still didn't know the truth about who saved them. The news reports had been vague. An armed civilian intervened. Authorities are investigating. No names, no details. Carmen preferred it that way. She'd never done this for recognition. She'd done it because it needed to be done, and this, taking down Sovereign, needed to be done too. She looked at Harding. What happened to the people at Meridian, the ones who saw me? They've been debriefed, Chen said. Signed NDAs. Officially, you were an undercover federal agent. That's all they know. And Jessica Monroe? Chen pulled up a file. She's been cooperative. Turns out she knew more about Meridian's operations than she let on. She's agreed to testify in exchange for immunity. Carmen nodded slowly, the woman who'd mocked her, who'd treated her like dirt. Now she knew the truth. There was a certain satisfaction in that. What about the others? Carmen asked. The employees who didn't know anything, the innocent ones. They're safe, Harding assured her. The company's being dissolved. Everyone's been offered relocation assistance and job placement. No one's being left behind. Carmen took a breath. Then she looked at the reinstatement papers. Everything she'd wanted. Her career, her reputation, her life back. All she had to do was sign. She picked up the pen. Harding and Chen watched. Carmen stared at the signature line for a long moment. Then she set the pen down. "I'll take the task force," she said quietly. Harding nodded, unsurprised. "You're sure?" Carmen looked at the network map on the screen. All those names, all those connections, all those people who thought they were untouchable. "I'm sure," she said. Chen closed the laptop. "Welcome to Ghost Protocol," she said. "We'll start briefings next week." Carmen stood. "One condition," she said. Harding raised an eyebrow. "Name it." "When this is over, when we've taken down the whole network, I want out, for real this time. No more missions, no more covers." "Deal," Harding said without hesitation. Carmen nodded and turned toward the door. "Carmen," Harding called. She stopped. "What you did at Meridian, taking down those gunmen, saving those people." He paused. "That was extraordinary. You should be proud." Carmen looked back at him. "I was just doing my job, sir." "No," Harding said. "You were being a hero, even when no one knew it." Carmen didn't respond. She walked out of the briefing room and into the hallway. As she headed toward the elevator, her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. She opened it. "Thank you for saving my life. I'm sorry for how I treated you." Jessica Carmen stared at the message for a moment. Then she deleted it. Some things didn't need a response. 2 weeks later, Carmen started her new assignment. The task force was small, 6 operators, each with their own skills and specialties. Chen led the team. Harding oversaw operations from DC. Their first target was a logistics company in Seattle, another branch of Sovereign's network. Carmen's cover this time wasn't a janitor. It was a corporate consultant. She smiled at the irony, from the bottom to the middle. Still invisible, still underestimated, exactly where she needed to be. 6 months. After that, Carmen sat in a coffee shop in Seattle's Pike Place Market. She wore a business suit and carried a laptop. To anyone watching, she looked like any other professional taking a break. But in that laptop were files that would bring down the Seattle operation. Names, transactions, communications, everything the FBI needed. She was scheduled to hand it off in 20 minutes. As she sipped her coffee, a woman approached her table. Carmen looked up. It was Jessica Monroe. Carmen's expression remained neutral, though surprise flickered through her. "May I sit?" Jessica asked hesitantly. Carmen gestured to the empty chair. Jessica sat, clutching her purse nervously. "I didn't think I'd ever see you again," she said. "Neither did I," Carmen replied. Jessica looked down at her hands. "I wanted to apologize, in person, for how I treated you at Meridian. I was terrible to you." "Yes," Carmen said simply. "You were." Jessica flinched. "I don't expect you to forgive me," she continued. "But I needed you to know that I'm sorry, and that what you did, it changed me, made me realize how wrong I was, about a lot of things." Carmen studied her for a moment. The arrogance was gone, the coldness. Jessica looked smaller now, humbled. "What are you doing in Seattle?" Carmen asked. "Working with a nonprofit," Jessica said. "Helping women who've been trafficked, trying to do some good, trying to make up for." She trailed off. Carmen nodded slowly. "That's good work." Jessica looked up, surprised. "You think so?" "I do." They sat in silence for a moment. Then Jessica stood. "I won't keep you," she said. "I just thank you for everything." Carmen watched her walk away. Maybe people could change. Maybe redemption was possible, even for someone like Jessica Monroe. Carmen finished her coffee and closed her laptop. She had a meeting to get to, a network to bring down. And after that? After that, she'd finally get to decide who she wanted to be. Not a soldier, not a janitor, Not a ghost. Just Carmen Reyes, whatever that meant. She stood and walked out into the Seattle afternoon. Somewhere in the city, criminals thought they were safe. Thought they were untouchable. They had no idea that a quiet woman in a business suit was coming for them. No idea that the person they'd never see coming was already there. Invisible, until she needed to be seen. And by then, it would be too late. Carmen smiled to herself. Some things never changed. Epilogue. 1 year later, a small beach house in North Carolina, Carmen sat on the porch watching the sun set over the Atlantic. The task force had completed its mission. Sovereign Consulting Group was dismantled. 43 arrests, hundreds of millions in illegal assets seized. Operations shut down across 12 states. It had taken everything she had. But it was done, and true to his word, Harding had let her go. No more missions, no more covers, just peace. She heard footsteps behind her. Agent Chen appeared with 2 beers. She handed one to Carmen and sat down. "Beautiful out here," Chen said. "It is," Carmen agreed. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the waves. "You ever miss it?" Chen asked after a while. "The work?" Carmen thought about it. "Sometimes," she admitted, "but not enough to go back." Chen nodded. "Well, if you ever change your mind." "I won't," Carmen said firmly. Chen smiled. "Good. You've earned this." They clinked bottles. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Carmen felt something she hadn't felt in years. Contentment. She'd been a soldier, a janitor, a ghost, a hero. And now, finally, she was just herself. No one knew her story. No one knew what she'd sacrificed. And that was exactly how she wanted it. Because real heroes didn't need recognition. They just needed to know they'd made a difference. And Carmen knew. She'd saved lives, stopped evil, brought justice. That was enough. More than enough. The ocean breeze whispered through the evening air, and for the first time in as long as she could remember, Carmen Reyes was at peace.